Hey guys, how's it going? This is TUSDarryl and welcome to my review of Resident Evil 4 Remake. Again. You may be wondering why I said again, and really, that's because this is my, third, fourth time trying to record this? So before, just a quick segue? It's not really much of a segue. Just a quick thing real quick. I tried recording this before, and if you saw my community post, I couldn't quite get it to the point I wanted to, and even in the moment when I thought, screw it, maybe it's fine, actually, the footage would not work properly. Like the footage I captured through the Elgato was choppy. And even with the footage aside, whoever bought FX Home, let's just say I was very disappointed with what HitFilm had became for the most part. So this video is being edited in DaVinci Resolve 18 specifically. So I know I don't do a lot of tricks in these videos and whatnot, but it's going to take me a while before I get used to DaVinci Resolve the way I got used to HitFilm Express. Maybe not as long, considering that the software is kind of... The video editing softwares tend to have some similarities, but even still, it's going to take a bit. That's all I can really say. It's going to take a bit before I can get the full hang of it that I want to have. With that said, let's get the ball rolling. Let's talk about the story of Resident Evil 4 Remake. That was a bait. I'm not going to talk about the story of Resident Evil 4 Remake because there's actually enough in the story for the remake that is different, or at least told differently, that I don't want to go into too much detail about it. Or at least that's how I see it. I will say that the major story beats that happen in the original game are still here in this game, but they happen a little differently or at different times. I'm not going to tell you what because I'm trying to avoid spoilers, but let's just say there's some that I really agree with and really like, and others that I won't say I disliked, but I just thought I was like, that's an interesting place to do that. But did they manage to capture the same magic that the original Resident Evil 4 did? I'm going to say yes and no. This game is a lot more serious, but it still keeps some of the campy charm of Resident Evil 4. And yes, you still get your bingo line, but it's still along the lines of what you'd expect from the tone from Resident Evil 2 Remake and Resident Evil 3 Remake. This one carries a very similar vibe to, I'd say, Resident Evil 3 Remake in terms of tone. Still serious, but still has its occasionally sillier, wacky moments. And with that, I'm going to move on to... What do I normally move on to after this? Oh, graphics. I'm a little out of practice. Again, thanks, software, for making me have to take a break for longer than I intended to. The game looks good, the characters look good, everything looks good. It's all in the RE engine. I don't really have much else to say about this. Everyone still looks mostly faithful to their original, I'm going to say original interpretations? No, interpretation is the wrong word for it. Their original appearance, I'm going to say that, in the original Resident Evil 4 game. Beyond that, the environments are about the only thing that I can think of that really got the biggest overhaul, in my opinion. Like, you'll recognize some sets, you'll recognize some areas. You'll know when you come to a certain point in the game that you've played before if you played the original Resident Evil 4, but the size of them, the scale of them, same difference. The scope, for the most part, that changes. How long you're there has changed. How much you do there has changed. But generally speaking, if you played the original Resident Evil 4, then you'll appreciate the glow up that has been had, that this game gave those areas. And if you haven't played the original Resident Evil 4, then you're still going to appreciate it because they're damn good looking areas. Now, when I say characters before, I was really talking about the main cast. Leon, Ada, Ashley, and Luis. I'm not going to go much further than those four. To me, that's the core group that you're with for most of the game. At least that you're aware of for most of the game. When I said characters, I was referring to them. The enemies... Now there's a wider variety among them in your general enemies, like your average grunts that you fight in the beginning of the game to the grunts that you're fighting towards the end of the game. With that said, the bosses and their designs, they've changed. And there's one in particular that I can't decide whether or not I'm as big of a fan of that design versus the original design or not. But man, it was a rough fight. Let me tell you, it was a rough fight for me. But I digress. So that's all I really have to say about the graphics and about the story. This is the part where I normally start talking about the sound. But, and I don't remember if I mentioned this in my Dead Space review or not, but I'm just going to reiterate it here anyway. I can talk about sound, but I can't talk about it great. Much like the music category that I occasionally bring in when there's something notable about the music, I'm going to start treating sound that way too. I don't have anything really urgent I want to say about sound in this regard. I'll still let the sound of the game play out and just tell you that, hey, the game sounds really good, but I'm not going to go into much more detail than that unless in the future I have an issue with something or there's something notable about it. Otherwise, just know that the sound in the game is crisp, and that's about all I can really say about it. I'm not that technical with sound, as you can see.
¡Ahí está! ¡Y esa reja! ¡Me jodas!
Actually, I take that back. And if you didn't notice, yes, I am off script. I'm doing this on the fly. The next few videos are going to be scripted. That's what I'm planning, at least. But this one I'm off script, so I can bring this up because it just popped in my head. I'm actually going to talk about voice acting for a second here. The entire cast of Resident Evil 4, most of them actually, not the entire, most of the cast of Resident Evil 4 Remake is spot on, or at least the way I would have expected them to sound in a remake. I forgot his name, Nick, I forgot his last name, reprises his role as Leon. He's just speaking more gruff and mature, air quotes, now, like, a grizzled vet for the most part who's seen this shit before and just wants to get the day over with. That's just an example of someone who's come back. But if you were expecting the voice of Ada, the one from Resident Evil 2 Remake, to come back in this one, I didn't double check this, but I don't think she did. And if she did or didn't, editing Daryl put it on the screen who plays who in both games. My point is, the Ada in this game, she just sounds off to me. She sounds really off, and that's not a detriment to the game itself. It's just, it feels like a weird misstep, or maybe a weird miscast. Because do I think she sounds bad necessarily? Not really. But for a character like Ada, there's a very specific tone that you're looking for, and it just wasn't there for this character, or for that casting choice. Maybe for another character, but this Ada just sounded a lot more deadpan than flirtatiously deadpan. It's hard to describe Ada's voice. There's less femme fatale and more deadpan. I don't know. It's weird. If you play it, you'll get what I mean. And those who have played it, you get what I mean. Now let's move on to the nitty gritty. We're going to talk about gameplay. Resident Evil 4 Remake is a modernized and enhanced version of the original game. And by that, I mean, take Resident Evil 4 in the way it controlled and the way it handled and what it popularized for, third-person shooters since that game, to come back around to this remake, which essentially takes all of that evolution from the game industry, also playing with this formula, or playing with that style of third-person shooting, over-the-shoulder third-person shooting, and what they did with Resident Evil 2 and 3 Remake, and you'll have this, which, dare I say, is one of the best executions of the over-the-shoulder third-person shooter style that I've ever played. Is that, like, blowing it up a little too out of proportion? Maybe a little bit, but that's why I said it's one of the best. Not the best, but one of the best. It's snappy, it's responsive, it'll pay off your car, it'll pay off your mortgage. It does everything. or at least it does everything for me or everything for me that I want it to do in a third-person shooter. Now, I say that, but Leon himself moves kind of slow. The shooting feels good. The dodging feels good. But Leon himself feels slow, and I think that's because of, and this is something that others have echoed in their reviews that I agree with, it's because of how modern it feels now. That formula that you had in the OG Resident Evil 4 is now modernized in several games, including, well, this one. Meaning enemies can be more aggressive now. Meaning you could throw more at the player at the same time, and it's up to the player to figure out what tools they want to use to get the job done. It took me half the game before I decided to start parrying the axes that were being flung at my head. I don't know why I didn't think to do that initially. I would just try and duck it and move out over to the side. I didn't think, let me just parry it. Like, it's a thing in this game. It wasn't in the original game, but it's a thing in this game, and it's really doggone satisfying. You can also stealth around in this game if you want. I don't know if you can, like, stealth. Well, no, you can't stealth the entire game. But I don't know if you can stealth most areas of the game, is what I want to say. But it's an option. It can thin the herd a little bit. I didn't even try the stealth, like, the first village area. Maybe I'll try that next time I boot up the game. But the stealth feels really good. It's not, like, robust or anything like that. It does its job, but it does its job really well, is what I'm trying to say. Leon's also got his trusty knife back. It's the same one from Resident Evil 2 Remake, but it has the durability of 3 now. Actually, no, I'm wrong. I'm remembering that wrong. Resident Evil 2 Remake is the one with the durability, and 3 Remake did not. So, no, the durability is just back now. But you get more knives to use. I will also say that a major difference here is that the knife in this game is strong, but you also have other knives you can pick up, other smaller knives. And why is that the case? Well, you can craft with those. You can combine those smaller knives with other components that you find in the game world and make different types of ammo. Specifically, ammo for your crossbow. Beyond that, those knives are just good to have in a pinch. All in all, the gameplay of Resident Evil 4 Remake is awesome. I really don't have anything else to say about that. It's just fantastic. You're not going to get sick of it anytime soon. The Mercenaries mode is out now, and while I haven't played it yet myself, that is just a mode that you're going to have a lot of fun in if you enjoy this style of combat. So, with that said and done, let's move on to the final verdict. This game's a go for it. I'm just going to tell you that straight up. It sounded like that the entire time, I'm sure, but hey, that's reviews for you. Sometimes the tone just carries. I'm not good at hiding that kind of thing as I'm explaining how a game was for me. And I guess it's debatable on whether or not a reviewer should try and remain monotone the entire time until the reveal, but the context was there. You knew this was coming. It's a go for it. Buy it. It's on the PS5. It's on the Xbox Series X and S. It's on PC, and for some reason it's on the PS4. I've heard from a coworker or two of mine that you probably don't want to play it on that, because from what they've seen, it runs. It certainly runs, but it's definitely a game you want to play on a next-gen or current-gen console or on PC. It's a little odd, though, that Xbox One isn't here, but I can kind of see why. You probably don't want to double down on more last-gen resources than you have to. But with all that said, I'm TUSDarryl. It's good to be back. Look forward to my review of whatever I decide to review next. I'm not holding myself to anything right now. Things are going to get kind of busy with work, so I may be gone again for a month, if I haven't been already by the time this video goes up. So, yeah. I hope you guys have enjoyed your stay. I will say that I do have the Final Fantasy XIV goof video. That's all written out and everything. I just need to record it. But again, that's going to take some time. So, with all that said and done, I'm TUSDarryl. I hope you guys have enjoyed your stay, and I'll catch y'all later. Bye.